Hi. Yep, that's right. Huge movie fanatic Nate coming at you for yet another Christmas slash holiday movie review. This time, unlike the last movie I reviewed, which was what I would regard as the highly atrocious Four Christmases, I'm coming at you with a quote unquote Christmas classic review. And this one, very much like the last movie, I picked up in looks like maybe early to mid February of this year at Half Price Books for $2 on the $2 clearance Rolly Rack card or whatever. I picked this up a few weeks before I picked up Four Christmases, not owning it on DVD and never necessarily ever maybe remembering seeing it all the way through. I figured, well, I could pick this up and review it in December as I'm doing now, which of course is Miracle on 34th Street, the original 1947 version. Last year, of course, I reviewed what I would regard as a companion piece to Miracle on 34th Street, which was It's a Wonderful Life. Feel free to go watch my review that I did last year of It's a Wonderful Life. I'll just briefly say I'm not a big fan by any stretch of the imagination of It's a Wonderful Life. I don't really like these old, with the exception of the movie I reviewed last year with Janet Leigh in it called Holiday Affair. I don't really like old time Christmas movies for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, my dad liked this movie as he did It's a Wonderful Life, and my dad had it on VHS. I'm sure I've seen it probably back in the 90s or something, but I didn't remember. If I had, I didn't remember anything about it. So I watched it. I got it in February, and I just saved it all the way for, of course, December, to watch it in December. I just watched it the past several days, and I probably like it more than It's a Wonderful Life. It's not, well, it's shorter, so it's easier to get through, and it's not as depressing as It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, that's just depressing, and that's like 2 hours or something. Nearly, if not 2 hours, then It's a Wonderful Life is nearly 2 hours. This is only like 90-something minutes or whatever, so it's a little more doable. It does a little bit more of what I suggested, It's a Wonderful Life should do. I suggested in that review that instead of having that beginning with them stupid talking planets or whatever the hell it was supposed to be, like the spirits and shit, that they should have just went in and just started the story very much like this movie does. It just, you start with this guy who, for all intents and purposes in the movie, is Santa Claus, Saint Nick, walking down the street or whatever, and the first scene we see with him is when he's talking to this guy, and you got all the reindeer mixed up and whatever, and you just start it like that, just a dry start, if you will, or whatever, and we just kind of, the viewer can either assume he's crazy or whatever throughout the movie, like the people that come across him would. And of course, by the end of the movie, it's not as convincing as It's a Wonderful Life as far as him actually being Santa, because he doesn't really do anything that convincingly, other than, I guess, the thing at the very end of the movie, which I knew was going to happen as soon as the photo for the house came up. Of course, I'd probably seen it before, but even if I hadn't, I'd know that, okay, I know how this is going to end. The house is going to appear at the end of the movie. I guess that's the way we're supposed to know that this guy really is Santa Claus, even though I don't think he pays for it. He just, gave him directions to it or whatever, the house. I don't think it's free. I think they gotta buy it, which is kind of lame. Long story short, this movie obviously is about a guy who walks into town or whatever and just stumbles across this, I'm not even going to say the store, just because they said it enough in the movie. That's another thing, is you could call this movie, a more apt title might be A Miracle at, what this name brand, which I'm not going to say, department store, because they spend a lot more time at the department store or talking about it than they do talking about this 34th Street. So you might as well just call it Miracle at you-know-what, which I'm not going to plug because fuck them. Miracle at the department store. So I find this to be, it's not as annoying as It's a Wonderful Life, but in a, like overtly annoying. But in a lot of ways, I find it to be almost more disturbing in the sense that it's just basically a big commercial for this big department store who happens to have a Thanksgiving Day parade, and in other department stores, which I imagine were are real stores as well. And I just found this to be almost just a goddamn commercial for this, you know, these stores, and one in particular, and it's just like, gosh, you know, viewing it with adult eyes, it's just like shit, you know, and it's like I say, it's not as overtly annoying as It's a Wonderful Life in terms of being depressing, but just the corporate, you know, commercialism, which this movie denounces, by the way. It's funny because it's like Avatar, you know, the movie, James Cameron movie denounces, I mean, all these James Cameron movies denounce violence and shit, but the whole fucking movie's full of it, obviously, because it sells and people like watching that shit. And it's just kind of like, you know, guns and all these, you know, robotic, you know, robots and all these flying hover gunships and shit. It's like the movie's like denouncing it, but yet we're having such a good time, you know, portraying this stuff. It's kind of like two-sided, whatever you want to call it. You know, and it's just like this movie feels very much the same way, where it's kind of like, yeah, you know, Santa's speaking against all this shit, but the movie's just permeated with all this shit and just the whole time. So it's just dumb. Very much like Four Christmases, this mother in this movie, who's the mother of this woman who I think went on to be, you know, an actress in her adult life, which is Natalie Wood, I think. Didn't she end up being in some movie with James Dean or whatever? But plays a little girl, and, you know, very much like the beginning of Four Christmases, where I identified with the characters in terms of not partaking in whatever, just, you know, commonly accepted, you know, like ways of society. This mother of Natalie Wood is very confidently like, you know, well, oh, I don't lie to my kids about Santa, and I tell her the facts, and I don't bring her up that way, and blah 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 blah. And this movie is just like kind of Four Christmases, where I think I forgot to mention in that review that I think as a result of, you know, going through Four Christmases, shit, I forgot to mention it. I think they ended up getting married and having a kid or something. I can't remember. But it seems like at the end of these movies, people who are in the what I would regard as the more healthy or correct mindset end up being bamboozled by the end of it into a, you know, stupid mindset, kind of like Scrooge and all this shit, where I feel like very much so he had the right attitude at the beginning of the movie, or at the beginning of the story of Scrooge, and then the end, you know. I mean, maybe not being grumpy. People don't have to be grumpy, but as far as other aspects of Scrooge's character, and just, you know, whatever. So anyway, I'm rambling and going on all kinds of different directions. Long story short, of course, you know, the influence, this guy is supposed to be Saint Nick, you know, aka Santa Claus or whatever. And throughout the course of the movie, we just see it's really the thing I find really disturbing about this movie is actually very realistic, and probably would happen should, you know, the real Santa Claus, actually end up on 34th Street or any other street in this gosh-forsaken country, is that I think what was portrayed in the movie would happen, unfortunately, where the guy would end up being, you know, committed and end up in court or hearing or whatever the hell they called it, in regardless, whatever it is, in court, and there'd be like a trial or a hearing or whatever, you know, and it'd just end up in this atrocious freaking, you know, quote-unquote justice system. I mean, that's where Santa Claus, that's where Santa Claus would end up in real life. So I think this movie is very realistic in the sense that, of course, you know, someone as amazing as Santa Claus, old Saint Nick, would end up in fucking mental, you know, by the goddamn system, would it be end up putting in the mental house and be end up on trial and all this shit. So I just found it very depressing. I mean, it's depressing in that aspect, not so much as just the overt depressive scenes like in, you know, It's a Wonderful Life. It's funny how both of these movies are more depressing to me than anything else. And of course, by the end of the movie, what's so funny is it's said a few times where it's like, belief is the faith is what you do, is how you believe in something. Shit, I can't remember the exact, I only watched it a couple days ago. I can't remember, yesterday I think. I can't remember, I had it earlier today. Faith is the, what you use when common sense, something like that. This is a very anti-common sense movie, and it's kind of, there's a line that's something like, you know, faith is what we use when common sense won't allow you to think that way, or some dumb shit like that. Of course, I'm a very common sense minded person, and obviously faith, you know, that word is something that I just completely despise for so many reasons, and so many people just are just oh, so I just think it's so funny. And I think at the end of the movie, someone even used the term my, like, my annoying common sense or something like that. My, oh gosh, I wish I was going to write it down, but, my just that darn old common sense gets in the way, and I'm just thinking, yeah, gosh, you might as well just get rid of it altogether and just, anyway, I'm just rambling. But long story short, I think at the end of the day, I mean, the best thing about this movie is apparently, not that it matters to me because I don't give a good goddamn about Academy Awards, but it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, the guy who played Kris Kringle in the movie won the Academy Award, whoop-de-doo. But that was what I was going to say, is regardless of any kind of fucking awards, which are meaningless, the best thing about the movie is probably the guy who portrays Saint Nick, because he does it in a pretty much perfect way. Obviously, this movie was remade, I think, like in 2003 or 4, with Richard Attenborough playing Saint Nick, which makes sense. I never saw that. I was working at Suncoast Motion Picture Company at the time. They sold basically overpriced movies. And I'm sure we had to play it in the store and shit like that. So it probably played this too, but you can't just, really just sit and watch the movies, especially during the holiday season. So anyway, long story short, I gave it 2 stars out of 4. I think that's what I gave It's a Wonderful Life. I don't particularly like this movie. It's just like pretty much 90 minutes of just whatever to me, It's kind of teaches you to just like put common sense aside and just have faith in bullshit, and that's something that I don't particularly believe in, but you're free to do whatever you want to do. So I feel like I went way too long and just branched off on all kinds of shit, but $2, whatever, shit. It'd be nice if I could review a freaking Christmas movie that I actually like. Well, maybe I'll do that next. So I think that does it for my review of the original Miracle on 34th Street, which once again should be called Miracle at, so-and-so department store. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.